everybody to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I'm the advertising manager, and I get to be your host today. We want to thank our sponsor, Weave a Real Piece. They have been so generous in sponsoring our episodes. We're excited to have them back again today. If you want to learn more about them, you can go to their website. They do wonderful things. They just had their conference up at Kent State. And if you go to their website, you can see the exhibits online there from that conference. So check them out. Weave a Real Piece. Our guest today is Carol Ventura. We're excited to have her. Carol has a degree in ceramics and printmaking. Her doctoral dissertation focused on Mayan backstrap weaving. She has taught in a variety of studio classes over the years and was the art historian at Tennessee Technological University until 2021. Her colorful tapestry crocheted shoulder bags caught Carol's attention in the 1970s when she was a Peace Corps volunteer in Guatemala. She's been researching the history and exploring the design potential of this incredibly versatile medium ever since. Her work includes bags, baskets, introspective self-portraits like we just saw. Her recent work was inspired by the Me Too movement, the crisis of disinformation, the rejection of science, and the politicization of the COVID-19. Carol exhibits, writes, and leads workshops. Her articles about tapestry crochet are around the world and will be in Piecework's winter 2023 issue. And she will teach felted, beaded, and flat tapestry crochet at the Touchstone Center for Crafts in Pennsylvania at the end of August. Hopefully she'll talk more about that. Welcome, Carol. It's good to have you here.
Oh, thanks so much for inviting me. This is so exciting. I've watched all the episodes, and this is like my dream come true.
Oh, good. To start off, what is your favorite tea?
Well, my favorite tea is actually fresh mint tea, made with peppermint, spearmint, lemon balm, and chocolate mint from my garden. And when I make it, it makes the whole house smell really good. I love it. And this is what I serve to guests, and it's always a hit.
You said chocolate mint from your garden? Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's a different kind of mint.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah, I don't know if it really tastes like chocolate, but that combination makes a really good tea.
Yeah, it does. Well, would you share how you got started? I mean, there's more than what I just read in your bio, but how did you get started in fiber per se?
Okay, well, my mom taught me how to sew and how to embroider and how to knit. And then a friend taught me crochet, and I learned how to spin, dye, weave, and make paper in college. And then Daryl Lancaster was my roommate for a short time, and she taught me how to do bobbin lace. And then I learned macrame from books, and I took basket making workshops. And then I recently joined the Handweavers Guild of Nashville because they also have excellent workshops. Shout out to everybody in that guild. They're a wonderful group of people. And then also being in organizations like HGA and and WARP, Weave a Real Piece, which I've been a member forever with them, has really nurtured my interests and expanded my horizons. And I'm just so appreciative to everyone. And I just retired a few years ago, and my goal was to go to workshops everywhere, and that's what I'm doing.
Sounds like a great plan. Just go to workshops. I love that. Well, you mentioned tapestry crochet, and you're really well known for tapestry crochet. Can you give us an overview of that if somebody has never done it before?
Sure. The same crochet stitches are used, but I usually use single crochet. And the difference is that instead of just using one yarn at a time and then switching, completely switching the yarn, you use two or more at the same time. And as you're crocheting, you pick up the one you need and put down the one you don't need. And I like to carry the other colors in the stitches, and that makes a really strong fabric, like this bag from Guatemala. And you don't even have to line it. But some people like to do it more loosely. This is a glove from Finland, and depending where you stick the hook, if you stick it under both loops or one loop, whether you carry the thread inside or some people carry it behind. This is from Turkey. Anyway, I recently, well, that article you mentioned in Piecework, it's about the variations of tapestry crochet, and it has so many possibilities. I just love it.
When will that be available? Do you know?
It's the winter 2023. It's the next one coming out.
So be another month or so, maybe?
Yeah, probably.
We'll have to keep an eye out for that. I'd love to see that article. It sounds wonderful. You were also or you still are, I shouldn't say you were also, you were a professor emerita of the art history program at Tennessee, right? Tennessee Technical?
Right. Tennessee Technological University. Well, we have a small program, so there's just one person in every area. So I was the art historian, and I retired a couple of years ago. And I taught, we didn't have a major in art history, but I taught the craft majors. The Appalachian Center for Craft is nearby. And so the clay and wood and metal and glass and fiber majors, I taught them. And then we also have an art education program. I taught them, and we have painting, drawing, and even graphic design. So I covered, the surveys. I did the basics, but my real interest is actually craft history. So I designed a history of craft class that lasted 2 semesters, and I taught that also. And I also developed a class I call Art Tour, where I would bring a group of students to another country. My last class went to Mexico, and we visited painters and printmakers and weavers and potters and jewelers. And so anyway, that's what I did.
So which do you think came first for you? Is it the love of craft or the love of history, or?
I think it was both, because my dad was in the Navy, and so we moved every couple of years. And when I was 5, 6, and 7, we lived in Portugal, and every summer they would, drag me along. I was an only child at that point, and we'd go to museums and famous places, and they said, if you're good, Carol, we'll bring you somewhere fun. And I would like, okay. And ironically, it's my favorite thing to do now, to travel and go to museums and famous places. But as a kid, I really didn't enjoy it that much. So I remember seeing the Mona Lisa and my dad pointing to it and saying, this is the most famous painting in the world. I remember thinking as a kid, I wonder why, but anyway, so that started my love of art history.
I love a kid's point of view. How come you're the most famous? Why is that famous? That's great.
Way back when, it wasn't in like a glass case and all that. Now, I still remember it was on a big pier in the museum, and it didn't look all that special, but
yeah. You've written several books, and we've got images of the book covers. And I'm always amazed when I talk to people who write, because it's a lot of work. So what do you think drives you to write books?
Well,
what's the passion for you?
Well, these crochet books, I wrote to actually spread the word about tapestry crochet. I was in the Peace Corps from 1976 to 80 in Guatemala, and I was working with a weaving cooperative. And so I didn't really pay all that much attention to the crochet. But then when I got back to the States, I started thinking about it and, crocheting a bit. And I realized it has so much potential, and people weren't doing it back then. We're talking about, the early 80s. And so I wrote, the first book was Tapestry Crochet, when my name was Carol Norton. And, it took years to find a publisher for that book. And finally, I met someone at a conference, Susan Bazerman, and she was one of the co-editors of Dos Quejadores. And she said, well, send it to me and we'll see. And they printed it. And then years later, after experimenting with a lot of, different things like adding beads to it and using different fibers, I wrote more tapestry crochet. And I couldn't find a publisher for that. I looked and looked. And so I decided to self-publish it. So that was a big undertaking, but I did it. And then later, I guess we'll talk about my weaving book next, but that was another adventure looking for a publisher. And I find myself in the same situation again, looking for a publisher. I wrote a book about the history of crafts. In fact, I've been writing this book my whole life, traveling around the world, photographing people weaving and doing pottery and all that stuff. And it's the book I wanted to have when I was teaching history of craft, because there are a lot of books that look at just ceramics or just weaving, but this is a survey that takes a global look, from Stone Age to present. But finding a publisher is just so hard. And people say, well, why don't you self-publish? But with self-publishing, you have to really have a good marketing, machine going, and it's a lot of work, to get the word out. And so if anyone out there has any advice about how to find a publisher for this book, I would really appreciate it. I've been submitting it, you submit and then you wait for weeks and you get a nice letter saying, it's a great book, there's a need, but sorry. So anyway, it's just as challenging to get a book published as it is to write it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So this next book that you talked about, it's the Mayan hair sashes backstrap woven, right?
Right. So
now this was your dissertation. This started as your dissertation, right?
This is my dissertation. Oh, I guess I'm not on the screen, but anyway, yeah, this was my dissertation. So I worked with a weaving co-op in Jacaltenango, Guatemala as a Peace Corps volunteer from 1976 to 80. And again, I was really interested in the weaving and kind of ignored the crochet. And then when I went back to graduate school, I decided to write my dissertation about all the crafts made in Jacaltenango, because this is a town that they made everything there that they needed. But my graduate committee encouraged me to just focus on what I knew the best, which of course was weaving. So anyway, I wrote it about the weaving. And then this was, I guess it was about maybe 5 years later, I was contacted by a retired librarian, a Dr. Fernando Peñalosa. He was translating English books into Spanish so that the locals can read the research about, what's been written about them. And it was right when desktop publishing was starting. So at that time, this was in, let's see, 96, we photocopied an English version and then a Spanish version and sold them for several years. I would go copy all the pages and it cost me like $12 and took forever to do it. And then one day I thought, I self-published that crochet book. I have the computer, I have the software, I know how to do it. I should just publish this book, as a single book. So it's the desktop published versions as a single book. And then I added some more pictures. And I couldn't get a publisher for this either, because they said the audience is small, which it is. But I got into not only documenting the hair sashes, I went to various collections in the US that had them. There aren't many, but there are a few. And I also got really into researching the symbolism of the hair sashes. You can see that the older woman is wearing one in her hair, and the younger girl at the loom is actually weaving one, and she has one hanging from her loom so she can copy the imagery. And it really has a long history, both the weaving and the symbolism of the hair sash. And that reminds me, looking at that picture, people in Jacaltenango, when we met, they'd say, oh, and what did you study in school, in college? And I'm like, oh, I studied weaving and ceramics and woodworking. And they're looking at me like, what an idiot. we know how to do all that stuff. We learn how to do that at home. You know, they study things like medicine or engineering or accounting, but who goes to a university to study weaving? So anyway, yeah, people learn at a very young age, and they're just incredibly patient and talented. That lady on the right, the older lady, she's actually rolling cigarettes. They bought everything there one by one. You didn't really buy a pack of stuff, and she's mixing. I think it's you know, I don't remember. I think it's anise and tobacco together. And anyway, I'm getting off topic.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah, I can imagine like if somebody today said, well, what are you studying? Dishwashing.
Yeah,
Yes, that's what I'm studying. Dishwashing. Floor sweeping. Yeah, that's what I'm studying.
well, you know, they probably teach those kind of things too. So we shouldn't make fun.
That's true. That's true.
I love
Not our
basket
research in that.
and I've taught basket making, and I've been in classes, I remember in psychology, where they make fun of, you know, basket making. They always use it as this example of what idiots, you know, will do. But anyway, the thing
Well,
about
I just saw a question I'm going to ask now. It's from Mary Holmes. Thank you for asking this, Mary, because when I read the title, and I think, Mary, you're saying the same thing, I thought the hair was woven. When it said hair sashes, I thought they took hair and made sashes out of it, but it isn't. It's something for your hair, right?
You know, I never thought of that, but yeah, they never cut their hair. So they divide it in two, and then they wrap it around, and then they wrap it around their head, and then they tie it on their head. Huh, I never thought of that.
So now we know, Mary. There you go. She was asking the same question. All right. Guatemala, talk some more about that. You went off to Peace Corps as a volunteer. And I mean, already I've heard you refer to it a couple of times. So what was some of the impact, especially the color? I mean, as we look behind you, look at the gorgeous colors that you use. Was that from being at the Peace Corps and being surrounded by all this work?
That really influenced me, because I was working with this weaving co-op. It was actually the largest one in the country. There were 400 ladies in it, spread around in villages, and some of them were like a day walk away. And the clients at the time, this is in the 80s, in the 80s, we could ship a package worth $100 to the States from the post office. So it was very convenient. Now they don't even have mail service in Guatemala and several other countries. But anyway, it was easy then. And some of the clients, you know, I designed pieces, but I also handled the correspondence. And they were asking for colors that weren't so bright and so contrasty. So, you know, I asked the ladies, well, can you use this, this, and that color? They were like, no, we cannot weave with those sad colors. And so they never really did do, you know, beige and white with gray or anything like that. I mean, they couldn't bring themselves to do it. So anyway, yeah, high contrast really makes their designs come alive. And even with the tapestry crochet, when you get to the picture again of me, on one side I have a blanket from my More Tapestry Crochet book done with variegated yarn. It's really difficult to actually see the image because of the variegation, and then I have the solid, but you need solid colors that with high contrast to really bring out the design. And so yeah, the colors influence me. I mean, you go to Guatemala or Mexico, the houses are bright red and bright yellow and bright green. And then you come back and we have like, you know, dull gray, maybe yellow, but you know, like eggshell, or it's just, the country's so vibrant. And when I brought the students to my last class, you know, to Oaxaca, they were just so happy and enthusiastic. And a lot of them commented about how boring it was going to be to go back home, because where's all the color? Because they have, you know, everything is colorful. Their food is colorful. Their clothing is colorful. Their houses are colorful. There's just color everywhere. So that's all.
That's an interesting point of view. I never would have thought about that. I mean, I always think of, weaving from that part of the world is colorful, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
never thought about how it just must surround you there.
Yeah. So let me say a few words about that Martin Luther King
Oh,
hanging.
please do. Please do.
Was the second portrait I did. The first portrait was the one we started off with, the self-portrait. And to do that, I projected my image on graph paper, square rule graph paper. But I don't know if you noticed in the portrait, my face was very elongated because the stitches, the tapestry crochet stitches are not square, they're more rectangular. So this Martin Luther King one, I took the square rule graph paper, because again, this is the 80s before computers and all that. And every other row of squares, I drew a line through it so that I had rectangles instead of squares. So then I projected his image, but I didn't take into consideration the placement of the stitches, because the stitches aren't directly over one another. They're a little to the right if you're right-handed, or to the left if you're left-handed. So you can't see, but if you look at like his cheek against the blue background, it's kind of bumpy looking. So that's when I decided to design tapestry crochet graph paper. And so I hand drew the graph paper, and that's in my first book, just called Tapestry Crochet. And when computers came around, that one of the reasons I got into computers was to draw the graph paper, which I finally did. And then the more colors you carry, the higher the stitch. So I have graph papers that, for if you're carrying a lot or not, and all different relationships. And so I have some of them on my webpage, others are in my book. But at the time I was home and my daughter was just a baby, and my goal was to make these portraits for people, as a business, and be able to stay at home and work. But it never worked out. So I don't think that was in the cards. I was meant to do what I ended up doing. But anyway, so the thing with the Martin Luther King hanging, I did all those people on the bottom first, and I didn't know who I was going to put on the top. If you look, there's like zigzags of blue, and that symbolizes the water, and zigzags of green, that's the land. And then these are the four main races of people, the red, white, yellow, and brown. And they're all exactly the same, and they hold hands. There's women and men. The women I put in skirts. And there's hearts in between their bodies. And there's a little heart where their heart is. And what I'm saying is that we are all the same. We are divided by the land and the water, but we're all the same. And then in the very top, I have everybody holding hands. And so as I was doing it, I'm like, who am I going to put on top? I was thinking of, religious figures and all that. And then I found out that Martin Luther King actually made a speech about people joining hands, everyone walking together. And I'm like, that is it. And so that's how he ended up there. I really admire him. But another important lesson about that is the blue that's in the bottom and the blue in the top are two different dye lots. I had run out of blue when I got up to his neck of the blue in the bottom. And then when I ordered more blue, it was so different. I had to rip all of that down to where the people are. And those people, that was the hardest part, because there's so many different colors. Usually when I'm crocheting, I'm only carrying one or two colors at once. But if you notice, the blues are slightly different. So that was a big lesson. Make sure you have enough of the same dye lot if you're going to do some big project.
Well, this basket, is this crochet that was felted?
No,
Or is
no.
it just the
If
picture?
you go back to me, I have the bag here. I can show
Oh,
you.
there it is.
It's beaded, and it looks fuzzy in the picture felted.
It
but
does. I apologize to
the beads are
everyone.
on the outside. And the nice thing about bead tapestry crochet is when you're making the stitch, the bead goes to the back of the stitch.
Mhm.
So we're looking at the back of the stitch with the beads, and then the front of the stitch always looks better than the back. But in this case, you have the front of the stitch is actually on the inside of the bag. And
Okay, you got it too low. Nobody can see it.
okay. See,
There you go.
I'm actually seeing, oh, okay. Yeah. So here's the inside
Mhm.
and here's the outside. And then I designed it so it's reversible. If I can do it.
Oh my gosh.
It does, it is very heavy because of the beads. It's probably gonna take me a while to do this. Anyway, you get the idea, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah. There we go. So you have like a day-night bag. Oh, there we go.
What's that made out of?
It's cotton. It's
Is it?
like pearl cotton. So here we go.
Wow.
Hmm. Okay, there we go. And the magazine publisher chose the name. I just picked those colors, and I guess it is an appropriate name, the Rasta bag, because those are the Rasta colors. So.
Well, the next works we have coming up is, I think, sorry, I'm jumping ahead here. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Here we go. These works are wonderful visually. The contrast, how well they're made, they're just beautiful, but they also have a strong message. So it's almost like, in a way, do you use your art to allow you to say things that you don't necessarily want to say, verbally?
Yeah, my art is very therapeutic. There's a whole area called art therapy, and that's where basket making comes in. A lot of times in mental institutions, people are making baskets because it requires so much concentration. And while you're making it, you're releasing endorphins. And then when you're done with it, you're very proud of it. And it's the same with crochet. The more complicated the project and the more repetition you have, it is releasing endorphins. So it's therapeutic that way. But also it helps me to get off my chest things that really bother me. And so no more lies. That's the purse that I wear, and I wear it to town and everything. And most people don't say anything, but my art friends always comment. They like it, but other people are probably just thinking, oh my gosh, look at her. But anyway, the basket on the left, that's actually in HGA Small Expression exhibit, and it was awarded second place, which I'm just thrilled about. And what that's all about is, we hear about how people are so entitled when they should be responsible, and how people are so greedy when they should be generous. So what I did is I put the words opposite one another. On the outside, you have a very kind of boring surface with the money sign on the bottom symbolizing the greed, and like the open shape, is actually inviting in responsibility and generosity. On the inside, there's even more heart. So I'm hoping that people will be lured into the responsible, generous, loving part of the basket, and just avoid the greed and entitlement. And I know it's not going to change anybody's mind, but maybe it'll get someone to think about what they're doing or how they can be more responsible or generous.
Now, as always, I wish I could see it in real life right now. Wish we all could see it in real life. But is the inside of the bag with beads? Is that why we're seeing that?
Inside is all beaded because.
Oh my gosh! Really?
So the thing with the Rasta bag, you can't even see the cloth underneath the beaded, and that's what, when I was beading, I realized I could put something different on one side of the fabric than the other. So this was very complicated, and I had to think about this for actually many years. And I had to come up with a special graph paper to do it. But what I'm doing, instead of carrying just 2 colors, I'm carrying 2 of the green and 2 of the black on the top. And then one of the green and one of the black has green beads. And then one of the black, anyway, I have, this sounds confusing. I have, let's see, 4 threads, 2 of one color, 2 of the other, with one color bead on one thread and one on the other. And I switched back and forth. So when I was crocheting, for instance, the M from entitlement, on the other side, it might, I don't know, it might be the letter O. So I dropped the bead in every time I made the stitch. And I either pulled up the black with the black bead or the black with the green bead. You follow me? Anyway, so yeah, and then the No More Lies. I am so frustrated with all the misinformation, in the media, just everywhere. And I like to listen to a podcast called Hidden Brain. And I realize I'm just wired differently than other people because I've always really valued truth. And one of the podcasts was all about really white lies. They called it something else. And no, if somebody shows you their new dress and asks you how they look, you're not supposed to say, oh, that makes you look fat, even if it does. I'd rather hear it and know than walk around looking fat, But most people, they just want a little white lie to kind of smooth things over. And anyway, I'm just totally against lying. And that has gotten me in trouble. My mom taught me, don't lie, just don't say anything. And I try to zip my lip, but my lips just unzip a lot, and I'm always getting myself in trouble. But
I'm never going to ask you how I look.
oh,
You'll tell me.
yeah, if you want the truth. Actually, you look great, Kathy.
Oh, I thank you.
You do.
Well, you are a college professor. You also teach at community centers. You do workshops. You do a lot of teaching. You teach at conferences, all of those things. How would you compare? I'm always curious about this. How would you compare teaching like in a workshop or at a guild versus university setting? What's some of the biggest differences?
Well, I retired from the university setting, but not from teaching because I love
right.
But the big difference is with the university classes, you have to give tests and grade, and you have to, make sure they really understand. And I, being in art history, I had all these slide lectures I gave. It was a lot of preparation. Whereas conferences, of course, is preparation. But first of all, everyone wants to be there. With the university, usually maybe 10% of the class want to be there, but the other 90% are like, well, we need this to graduate. And, so in workshops, they want to be there, and it's a lot of fun, and I don't have to test and I don't have to grade. It's just a totally different atmosphere. And so I really did love teaching, though, not online. I taught the last year online, which I just hated, during the whole COVID thing, because what I enjoy about teaching is the interaction with the students. And I've learned more as a teacher than I ever did as a student, because they ask really good questions that make you think. And then I would give out extra credit if they find the answer. And then what happened, I found out some of the students got together and decided what they're going to ask me, and then the other student would give the answer for extra credit. And so I nipped that in the bud. But anyway, they're always learning, and I was learning along with them. But yeah, teaching in conferences, I think, yeah, it's just a lot more fun, and it's quick. It's not a whole semester, it's just a few days.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I had a student once. They had to take, when I started teaching at Tech, they had to take 5 art histories. And so he was in 5 of my classes, and he would sit in the back of the room and make fun of me. And when he finally had his 5th class, I was like, thank God. And then someone told me years later that he said I was the best teacher he ever had. And I'm like, are you kidding? So you never know what seeds you're planting, you know?
Made your life miserable for 5 classes and then you find
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Well, good for you. I'm glad you found that out.
Yeah, I'm glad they told me.
Yeah. Well, I love your website because you share a lot of information. There's all kinds of things you can find on your website, and I encourage you all to, check it out when we get off of here. There's free patterns. You've got all kinds of videos. And what's interesting is that I think a lot of websites lately are just figuring out how they can monetize what they know. How can they make money on their website? You don't do that. Why is that? I'm glad, but why is that?
I struggled financially for many years. And so I can really relate to the challenges of, not having enough money to do what you want. And I also recognize that people need a creative outlet, mentally, and it's good for your ego. And again, it's good to get those endorphins out. And so at first, like when I was financially, challenged, anything I did had to break even financially or maybe make a little money well, now I'm to the point where that's not a consideration. It is expensive though to maintain the sites, especially I feel like, no offense to the mafia, but I feel like those anti-hacking, programs and people that help you, I spend hundreds of dollars a year to protect my sites, from the hackers. And so anyway, I do sell some of the patterns and that's to offset it a little, but I know I break even anymore, but it's okay. Now I'm in a different financial situation, so it's all right. And I do hope, crochet, you only need a hook and yarn. You don't need a lot of room or equipment. And it's, a great outlet. And now with the internet, there's a lot of groups and you can see all these YouTubes. And so anyway, I'm just wanting to share what I know with people.
Well, thank you for your generosity.
You're
That's
welcome.
wonderful. Now, you've traveled a lot. And you said earlier that you really like to travel. What do you think was for you is the number one benefit for all of that travel? How's that changed you?
Well, I think I already mentioned that my dad was in the Navy, so we lived all over the place, and they always, went and saw stuff and brought me in, and that planted a seed in me. I really liked living in Portugal. We were there for 3 years, and that's part of why I joined the Peace Corps. I didn't want to just be a tourist. I wanted to live in another culture, and traveling, for one thing, I really am interested in fomenting world peace. It's kind of corny, but I am. And one way to help pacify the world is to show there are a lot of ways of doing things. And they're not necessarily right or wrong. People all over the world have the same needs and they meet them differently. If we could not only accept, but applaud the differences, in how things are done and why they're done, we would have peace. Even in the tapestry crochet world, there are some people online saying, no, the way tapestry crochet done is this way, it's not that way. And I'm like, there are lots of ways of doing it. They're all good ways, But anyway, yeah, so travel expands your horizons, and plus it's fun and it's very inspirational. I get all kinds of ideas for patterns, I was taking pictures of pavements or, in the airport while I'm waiting for the plane. Sometimes there's interesting patterns in the carpeting or on the wall, and eventually it ends up as a pattern. And, I don't copy it exactly, I tweak it, but, it ends up somewhere.
Oh, that's great. I never thought about that. That's a great idea. Well, I'm always curious about, how would you describe yourself if you talked about yourself in contradictions? I don't know if that makes sense, but how would they apply to you? Like for me, for an example, I am so messy. You can kind of tell from what's behind me, but if you could see the rest of the room, I'm a mess. But there's certain things I'm absolutely obsessive compulsive about. So that's kind of a descriptive contradiction. Messy, not messy. What's a contradiction for you?
Okay, well, it goes back to the travel. I just love to travel, expand my horizons, get inspiration, have fun, but then I love to be at home. When I get back home, I'm just so thankful. First of all, I have a really nice home, but it's just so nice to be in your own bed. And I'm really a homebody at home. I live outside of town and I only go into town like 3 or 4 times a month, but I love travel, but then I love to be at home. So I think that's the contradiction. And I love to learn new things. And the best way to do that is really to get out of the house and do it. So.
Yeah, when I was teaching beginning weaving class, I could not tell my students enough, just go take a workshop somewhere, go to a conference somewhere, even if you're not traveling, big travel, go to the next county over and see what they're doing.
Right.
It just widens you up, right?
And it's good for networking. That's the one thing I do throughout my career. When I advise teachers now, I always say, go to all the conferences, meet the people. Because, well, for instance, me being on this show right now, it's because I went to Convergence in Knoxville and pleaded with you to let me be on the show.
How much money did you give me for being on the show?
But that conference opened so many doors and it was so much fun. And I should have been doing that all along. When I was teaching, I always thought, oh, if I go to this conference, my students are going to miss class. And then the last few years of teaching, I realized I can hire a replacement. So I did. I hired a replacement and I went off to this conference and that conference, and that made a world of difference. And in fact, I wouldn't be looking for a publisher right now if I had more of a network, because it's through, the one book I had published, it was by going to a conference and meeting the publisher,
Well, and I have to clarify something. You may think that's how you got on Textiles and Tea, but one reason why I was asking that is because I did know your name.
Oh.
Oh yeah, I saw that you taught, and I would see your work in exhibits. I mean, you really did do a lot of networking, even though you may not realize it.
Oh.
I knew your name long before I knew you. So It's so true. If you get out there and go see the people.
Yeah, you have to get out there, meet people, and especially if you're an artist, you have to submit to shows. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I'll go ahead and say it. My piece that won second place, in Small Expressions, it was rejected from the previous show that I submitted, not Small Expressions. It was another international show, but all the shows have different jurors and it's very competitive. Usually they have to take 100 pieces and, whittle it down to maybe 20 or 30, but you just have to go out there and submit your work. And if you get rejected, well, just try again. And if you get an award, yay. But you just never know. You got to get out there.
Well, the next question is, can't wait to hear the answer to this one, is what's next for you? What are you going to do now?
Oh my God.
We've talked so much about it already. Is there anything else?
Right. I told you a lot of what I was going to do, but so I'll be teaching at Touchstone Center for Crafts, and it's actually August 26th, 27th, 28th, and it's for beginners or advanced crocheters. And I contacted them to tell them about this interview, and she said, right now I don't have enough people to make the class they only have 2 people in it. So please sign up. It'll be fun. It's 3 days,
Now, where is this? Where is Touchstone?
It's in southwestern Pennsylvania in Farmington.
Oh, okay.
Actually kind of near the Frank Lloyd Wright House. I'm going to drive up there. Hopefully the class will make. And I've been to Falling Water once, but I hear there's another house there too. And I might go back to Falling Water again. It was so great. But anyway, and I'm also taking classes. I don't know if this is true in every state, but in Tennessee, if you're over 60, you can take free college classes. And, you know, the semester long type, not the workshop. And so I've been taking classes at Tennessee Tech, and the Appalachian Center for Craft is part of Tech. And I signed up for a glass class in the fall. I'm going to be taking all kinds of classes in every semester of class. So it's kind of like being back in school, but now I don't have to worry about grades. I don't have to, you know, have a waitress job or, you know, do all this stuff to make ends meet. I can just do it and enjoy it and learn. And so that's, you know, in the future. And also I'm hoping, again, I'll find a publisher for my craft history book and finish that up and then promote it, because a lot of people with real publishers, they go around promoting at conferences. I would love to do that. So
There
that's,
you go.
and
Be a Convergence doing that.
right, I'll keep exhibiting and giving workshops and taking workshops and traveling, and I probably
So
forgot.
all of you who are planning your workshops for your guilds, here you go. You can do, I want to learn how to do backstrap one. I've never done that.
Well, you know, I just recently taught it actually to a group from Mexico and Guatemala, which I never thought I would. In fact, I had a Fulbright a stint in Guanajuato, Mexico, at the university there. I was teaching weaving at the University of Guanajuato. You know, who would have thought?
Yeah.
But anyway, there are a lot of great teachers. Laverne Waddington is actually the very best backstrap weaver. And she lives in, I believe it's Bolivia. She's from Australia, but she sometimes comes to the States and, you know, gives classes. I really highly recommend her. But if you can't get Laverne, I'd be happy to teach you.
Well, we've got bunches of questions. Let's see if we can get through some of these, okay?
Okay.
Hi, Michaela. She wants to know, do the Guatemalans dye their own threads for their colors, or they purchase dyes?
No, they purchase the thread already spun and dyed. And some of the colors are more color fast than others. I remember turquoise was a color that would always run no matter what. And the thread is incredibly thin. It's like sewing thread. And there's different qualities of it. The very best was the embroidery floss that come in little hanks, but they usually bought, you know, big skeins of the thread.
Well, several people have been asking, what do you use? What kind of yarn do you like to use?
Well, I use I think it's a size 3 crochet cotton. It's the heaviest crochet cotton. It's like pearl cotton.
Mm-hmm.
And that's mostly what I've been using. The brand Sinfonia is the latest one I've been using. Usually what happens, I find some threads I really like, and then they discontinue it. Tacky though, their thread, they have a good color selection. I haven't used theirs in a while, but I've made projects with them. But I like the Sinfonia. I think it's by Omega, and it's a nice thickness.
Mandy, can you find the link for the class in Pennsylvania? It's called Touchstone Center. People are asking for that, to put it in the notes. If you would do that, that would be great.
Yeah, Touchstone crafts.
They want to know, what is the dimension of the Martin Luther King piece?
Oh, it's about 4 feet high by about, I don't know, 24 inches wide. If you go to my tapestrycrochet.com webpage and click on gallery, you'll see a bunch of pieces, and you click on the piece and it tells you the date I made it and the dimensions and, you know, what it's made of.
And Karen Williams, thank you, Karen. She said Laverne Boddington has either already moved or is moving back to Australia. And then she put the Touchstone link in there. Thank you, Karen. We appreciate that. That's wonderful. Karen LeBlanc wants to know, are those beaded bags? And you did say that was heavy. She said they're very beautiful. So is it the beads that make it heavy, that it's kind of 2 layers, or both?
It's just 1 layer.
Okay.
crochet, but the beads are glass beads. I guess if you use plastic beads, maybe it wouldn't be so heavy. But in my bead and felted book, I have a lot of pieces that are just partial beads, like with bead highlights. I have done some fully beaded pieces, but again, it's heavy to carry around, but it looks good. So my mom used to say, you got to suffer to be beautiful. I was never willing to suffer. But if you don't mind the
But you
weight.
must suffer for your art, you know.
All right.
And I knew they would. People want to know about those beautiful pieces behind you on the wall, the framed pieces.
Oh, okay. Well, the frame pieces, again, they're my art therapy. One of them, the art hysterical triptych thing, I thought we were going to look at that, but that's on the very, yeah, that one. Okay, so that's on the very top on that side on the wall. And this was made to express my frustration about the lack of support for the arts. So during the Renaissance, of course, the arts were supported by the church and the state and the public. And often my colors are symbolic. So purple was the color of royalty and the color of church, the church, the Tyrian purple and all that. And then in the Dark Ages, that's from the fall of the Roman Empire to the Renaissance. I just realized I had those hung up backwards because the Dark Ages came first. But anyway, there was very little support for the arts. Now, of course, some great art was made during the Middle Ages, but that lack of support really shows. So in art history, we spend a lot of time with the Greeks and Romans. They supported the arts, a lot of time in the Renaissance.
Mm-hmm.
Got to do the medieval period quickly. And then today, so and it's black and white, because it's the Dark Ages. And then I put history's no mystery, the priorities set are the legacies left. So I wonder, what are art historians going to be teaching about the art of our time? Mm-hmm. Because like the Dark Ages, there's some support, but come on, there's no really the strong support like we had during the Renaissance. So what is this, the second Dark Age? What are they going to call this time? And so really the priorities that we set, not just about art, but about everything, is really our legacy. And we should be careful about those priorities. So that was my art historian kind of, frustration.
Mary Holm wants to know about the scarf and the top you're wearing.
Okay, well, the scarf, this is from the More Tapestry Crochet book, and I'm actually half Ukrainian. So I chose these colors in honor of the Ukraine. Thank God my grandmother came over here in the early 20th century. Anyway, this is from Mexico, and it was backstrap woven in 3 pieces. Mm-hmm. And anyway, that's why I chose these colors.
Well, thank you for sharing that. We appreciate that. Somebody wants to know where they can find your work to buy. It's on your website, right?
Well, I don't sell actual pieces, but
okay.
Patterns. I'd probably make maybe $1 an hour if I sold the pieces. What I'd like is to show people how to do it, and then they can make them themselves. How many of us make gifts for our friends and family, and they look at it and hate it, and put it somewhere, and you've spent like so much time, and actually it's expensive too. Like this beaded bag, these beads are expensive. But anyway, yeah. So I don't sell my actual work.
Okay. Oh, gee, that means I have to get good at it. Oh my gosh. Well, I can't believe it. As always, I never can believe it's time to stop for the day, but it is. Thank you so much for being on here, Carol.
Oh, well, thank you, Kathy, for
I
inviting
think you're one of these people, I could just sit for hours and talk. You're like an onion. There's
Oh.
so many layers. I think there's probably so much more we could talk about.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry we don't have time to do that.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the invitation.
Well, we are excited to see your work. And again, I remind everybody to go to your website and learn more, see more of her work. And again, if you're the least bit interested in doing this or seeing this, I can't imagine that you're not. She has all kinds of information on there. So check out her website. It's carolventura.com. You can see more of her work, but she has tons of information there for you. If you're interested, check out her class later this month, right? This month, right? August? Yes. And check that out if you want to learn how to do this incredible craft. I think it'll be a wonderful time for all. We want to thank our sponsors, Weave a Real Piece. They are going to have a get together in Asheville the 18th of August. So if you're interested, it's going to be at Local Cloth. If you're going to be in the area, someone had asked, I think in the chat or somewhere, where is Warp? And they're everywhere. They're all over. They don't have like a building where they meet. But so if you're in the Asheville area and you want to meet some of the folks for Weave a Real Piece, check it out. August 18th, Asheville, North Carolina, Local Cloth. Go to their website and you can learn more about that. So thank you again, Warp. We appreciate all the times that you have supported Textiles and Tea and being a sponsor today for Carol. If you would like to sponsor or your business or your guild, or just you want to honor a particular person, you can learn more about that on our website at weavespendie.org. And you can go to the Textiles and Tea tab and go down there and I'll show you how to be a sponsor. We have Spinning and Weaving Week coming up. I know you're all excited about that. October the 2nd through the 8th. We've got all kinds of tours, and they are probably one of the coolest things we do during Spinning and Weaving Week. We have all these artists. We get to see where they create. We can learn more about them, their environment. It's really interesting to see those. So check that out. We've got all kinds of events coming up. There's thread talks, fashion show, which is like show and tell. Sometimes that fashion show name is misleading. It's show and tell. We've had all kinds of things, not just fashion. Great towels, beautiful towels. So bring those on. We'd like to see them. We'll have vendors and you can meet with them online and learn about new products. You can ask questions. It's a great way to see things. And Art Sparks, if you want to have a little workshop that's kind of like a little tiny couple of hour workshop, you can sign up for those also. And again, week of October 2nd through the 8th, go to our website at weavespendie.org and you can learn all kinds of things about Spinning and Weaving Week. We want to thank everybody who supports HGA by donating to the Fiber Trust and being a member. All these programs that we do, like Spinning and Weaving Week, Textiles and Tea, Careers in Textiles, those are all supported through donations to HGA, and we do appreciate that. All of you who have donated, thank you so much. With Convergence coming up, don't forget those benefits that you get by being a Fiber Trust member. Next week, oh, if you missed an episode, don't want to forget that. You can see them on Facebook Live, HGA Facebook Live. You can go on and watch any of them. If you don't want to go on Facebook, you can watch them on YouTube. And I encourage you to subscribe, because if you do, then you'll get a notice when a new one's uploaded. Those take us a little bit longer to get those uploaded. Facebook is right there now. Next week, we have Lisa, who, I'm not going to say her name right. I just know what, Klakulak. Lisa Klakulak. Lisa, I'm so sorry I butchered your name. Lisa Klakulak. Her work is just as good as her name. We are so excited to have her on next week. So thank you all for being here today. Have a great week and happy tea.